All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending upon where you're at. My name is Adam Hops. I'm with the National Operations Center of Excellence. And thank you for joining today's webinar on the Transportation Operations Manual with a focus on emerging trends and practices. This is a series. I put a link in the chat box to the first one on the TOM webinar, which provides a really nice overview and an extensive discussion with Jennifer Portnova of North Carolina DOT and John Hibbert of Georgia DOT about what the TOM is, what it isn't, the purpose it's being served, how organizations are using it to advance their internal knowledge, skills, and abilities. So if you haven't seen that one, I really suggest taking a look. The presentation portion is about 20 minutes, and then there's a great roundtable conversation that's after it. This is the second in the series. The third in the series will be on April 18th. You can register with the link to the calendar that's in the chat box. And it'll be focusing on the tools that support the TOM. So how the NOCoE website is adjusting to support the operations manual, some upcoming projects that'll keep adding to the manual, and how all of you can provide input into the manuals update and process over time. Couple things before we turn it over to Raj to talk about emerging trends and practices. First, we want to acknowledge the tragedy of this week in Maryland, and that we all support our friends at Maryland DOT. They've had a string of terrible things in that agency, and we know that this is another, and certainly thinking of them and the good work that they do, and immediately went to work to do. And then the other item is just to let you know that there'll be some polling that's done throughout as Raj talks. I encourage you to work on those polls. We don't need to take a time out to do it, but we really do want to know what your background is on that, and familiarity with the TOM. So I'll be putting those up at some point as we talk. Raj, I will turn it over to you. Thank you for being here today.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, Adam, can you confirm if you can see my presentation view?
It's looking good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It's not a presentation view, but because when I do the presentation view, it goes into three different screens, right? So good afternoon, everyone. There's 50 participants on the call at this time and 52 overall. So thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar. We're going to spend some time today talking about the Transportation Operations Manual, of course. But before I get into the Transportation Operations Manual, my goal is to at least give or provide an indication on what we mean by emerging technologies in the context of this discussion. Then we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what is in the Transportation Operations Manual overall, what the part A through part F. And then I'll spend time on two particular chapters within the document, the Technology Trends chapter and the Emerging Technologies topic as well, both of which the industry trends. That is chapters number 29 and 30. So with that, my name is Raj Ponnaluri. I lead the Florida DOT's Emerging Technologies program. I've been in this position for just over a year and a half. Prior to that, I've been the Florida DOT's Connected and Automated Vehicles engineer for well over 5 years, where we created a significant program, starting with no staff, no money, no nothing, no projects, to a $126 million program with 70 plus projects, and then some of them including federal grants, etc. So this Emerging Technologies program that I'm going to talk about and then get into the TOM is really all about what's happening out there today in the world, so to say. So we did a quick survey of several folks and asked them the question, what are the hot topics on your mind today in transportation? And the word cloud ended up with something like this, right? Obviously, safety is very much at the very top of the agenda for most folks. Obviously, it has to be. And then you see references to innovation, electric vehicles, mobility, freight, connected vehicles, collaboration, of course, unmanned aerial systems, wireless rail, micromobility type of things, and of course, as I said before, emerging technologies sort of is an umbrella that covers all these areas, so to say. And the reason I put this slide up is to kind of start the conversation and say that emerging technologies includes many more things than just one or two. It's just not unmanned aerial systems, unmanned aircraft systems. It is just not advanced air mobility or rail safety or freight, etc. It covers a whole slew of topics, including connected and automated vehicles, and shall we say even electric vehicles. So here are a few examples I want to show on a couple of slides. On the top left, you see a situation where you have connected communities, so to say. And in a connected community, you have all kinds of things happening. You have bicycle activity, you have pedestrian activity, you have the airport activity, for instance, you have the high rises, and then the, shall we say, the Internet of Things type of elements. So many aspects come together to form what we all use in terms of the word ecosystem. From that point of view, if you start drilling down into details, you have this PDD, the personal delivery devices, which are increasingly becoming common in urban areas predominantly. So we talk about personal delivery devices. Then we have the lane closure notification type of system, which we have implemented here in the state of Florida. You have the drones or the unmanned aircraft systems. You have the electric vehicles that are beginning to play a big role in the modes today in this day and age. Wrong way driving is another aspect where here in Florida and many other states, advanced detection, etc., and communication back to a traffic management center type of thing. I know John Obenberger is on the call. He's very passionate about the traffic management systems, and he leads the TRB initiatives as well. So with experts like him and others, we're always looking to see how to move the needle with emerging technologies. I mean, you look at John Corbin's roadway digital infrastructure initiative, for example, right? And then we get into utilizing technologies for safety improvements. What you see on the bottom left are actually real projects here in Florida, from Florida, where we have conducted extensive amount of effort trying to figure out how to improve safety of motorists and road users, including bicyclists and pedestrians, using what is called the NMIS, the Near Miss Identification Safety System. The point that I'm really trying to make is that the emerging technology market is moving pretty quickly. And some of the hot topics, of course, are AI, right? Artificial intelligence is one of the key drivers today. I don't think there is a household or there's a person who does not talk about AI in this day and age. There's a lot of conversation, but the question then for us transportation professionals is, what is AI from a transportation perspective? Is it all about generative language models, as you see on the left-hand side at the bottom? Or is it about deep learning from data that are collected out there? Or is it you take all the data and start conducting machine learning algorithms, and you develop those and then eventually lead towards an artificial intelligence approach? The key is anytime we talk about artificial intelligence, we should not forget that there has to be a human in the loop, because AI, shall we say, techniques provide you with the outputs which could potentially automate your systems, even at traffic management centers. And we don't want AI to go ahead and automate everything, right? We need a human being to vet the outputs and then take the necessary decisions. So we need to put some guardrails. We need to have some guardrails around these. So here in the state of Florida, and I'm sure in practically every state and across the nation, the AI policies are being developed with a focus on human in the loop, for instance, transparency and accountability, data privacy and governance, etc. And then, of course, data protection, privacy elements. Ethics is another one, security type of detail. Then we have the unmanned aircraft systems with advanced air mobility, the eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing, right? So these are some of the emerging topics. Digital twins is, of course, goes without saying that in this day and age, digital twins are also being proposed as a way to look at what is happening there in a 3D model framework, but also take those 3D models to make some real-time decisions. Data exchange platforms is another big area. And as I said before, Federal Highway is leading the roadway digital infrastructure with John Corbin taking the initiative forward. For those, we need data from different states, from different entities, from local agencies as well. So what types of data do you collect? Connected vehicle data, sensor data, application program interface or API information that flows in. How do you bring all these things together? And of course, last but not the least, on this slide, on the top left, you see what we call the work zone information that has to flow in. So the point I'm really trying to make is that emerging technologies can go in many different directions. And the question is, which direction do we want to go in, right? The reason I put up this slide is to explain and express, which I think is common knowledge to experts here, that technology initiatives can cut across various modes and should cut across various modes. It is not always about moving vehicles from point A to point B without any impedance or without any interruption to traffic flow. That's not the point. We need to cater to the bicyclists out there, to the pedestrians. As I said before, the freight, the rail systems are out there. The autonomous vehicles, the connected vehicle systems are expanding significantly. There's a need to make sure that seaports are properly connected. There's technology with drayage, for instance, the first mile, last mile connectivity with freight. There's alternate fuels that are coming on board. We talk about transit signal priority, but there's a lot more to transit than just transit signal priority, right? We can use, shall we say, automated guidance. We can have automated vehicle locator systems. We have automated passenger counts. There's a whole range of things you can do with transit systems, not to mention the wireless power transfer, which is becoming very common in this day and age, in terms of conversation at least. So digital twins, as I said before, cybersecurity aspects. We can talk about emerging technologies for the next 45 minutes and still stay on that one slide. Now, let me quickly switch gears to the Transportation Operations Manual. If any of you have not heard of the Transportation Operations Manual, this is a good time to get to know, because you are going to continue hearing about the TOM, as it is called, the Transportation Operations Manual. The AASHTO folks have, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, they have put in a significant amount of effort trying to develop this document. And I see there's a questionnaire that has popped up here. Adam, do you want me to pause when folks answer these questions, or do you want me to just continue?
Well, I think it'd be great if you continue for those who can answer it, and it'll drop off their screens once you answer, so you can see the presentation.
Nice. Thank you, Adam, for that. So there you have the questions. Please answer these questions if you don't mind, because these will help us at AASHTO and the AASHTO working groups trying to figure out how the TOM is being used. Have you heard of it? What else can be done to get the message across, right? Now, back to my slide deck. So what is the Transportation Operations Manual? It serves as a comprehensive resource for TSMO practitioners, the Transportation System Management and Operations practitioners. It's a resource guide at all levels. For the entry-level folks, if you want to know what is operations and maintenance, you can go to the guidebook. If you want to know how to develop a program, you have elements in there. If you want to know what specific strategies should be employed, you have answers there. I wish I brought the document with me. It's a pretty big, thick book, I should say, and there's lots of great, copious amounts of information in there. So it offers guidance to agencies to implement TSMO in the respective states, local agencies, and organizations. It is also, what I would say, it provides a common basis so that there's no inconsistency, shall we say. One of the goals of the TOM, in my opinion at least, is to build that consistency with respect to the understanding and application of TSMO at large. It also serves as a tool to advocate for and train TSMO practitioners. And the reason this point is important is because often I get the question, I'm sure you do too, how do you justify funding your TSMO programs? What do you explain to your leadership? And how do you get that message upstairs, right? And one way to do that is to know what is in the TOM, Transportation Operations Manual. It provides a lot of great detail, which you can use to support your funding, the benefit cost type of thing. Last but not the least, it is not only a complementary resource to the Green Book, the Highway Capacity Manual, the Highway Safety Manual, and the MUTCD, but the key point here is this is a living, breathing document, as we call it, right? In other words, it is going to be updated periodically, of course, not every day, so to say. So there's a lot of folks who are investing their time, effort into this one. State leaders from the TSMO practice are involved. I mean, the John Hibberts and Jennifer Portanovas of the world are actually involved in this initiative. So I can say that Tom is in good hands with Ashto leading the charge and with everybody contributing to it. So what does the TOM contain? At a very high level, I'm not going to go into all the chapters or anything like that, but at a very high level, the Transportation Operations Manual can be divided into parts A through F. A being introduction. In part B, you'll get to know a lot more than what you probably already know about the concepts and context when it comes to TSMO practices. And one of the big things with any program, TSMO in particular, is how do you develop a good program? How do you develop a good program? How do you manage that program? You will read about all those elements in part C, which is the TSMO program development and management. And then the project development aspect is covered in part D, with some of the day-to-day minutiae, the tactical elements. They're all covered in part E. And the one I'm going to touch on is part F, which is the industry and trends. I'm going to call it the chapter, but there's 2 chapters in there. So with that, let's quickly move on to what we are talking about with respect to technology trends. I just put a screenshot of this. If you notice, on the right-hand side of this slide, in this chapter contents, you'll see that in chapters 29.1 through 29.7, you have advanced communications. There's a reference to cybersecurity. There's a detail written up about cybersecurity, 16 pages in all, quite frankly. Big analytics is a major theme as well. Artificial intelligence and advanced computing is covered in here. Connected vehicles, automated vehicles, and then quite a few good references are also indicated. So the point here is one more time, what specific aspects would you be interested in knowing when it comes to providing the right kind of communications across the board, etc. So let's dive into this a little bit more. So this chapter number 29, right? Chapter number 29 on technology trends. In the advanced communications section, you'll see information about how to supplement radio frequency and fiber infrastructure for voice and data communication. There's in-depth information written up about cellular communication, satellite communication, mesh networks, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth communication, etc. And I'm sure folks here, it should not be news to you. You know pretty much about all these aspects. The detail that is gone into really explains what type of approaches are useful under different conditions. In other words, under what conditions do you want to utilize the cellular connectivity, mesh networks, etc. Here in the state of Florida, we have 100% fiber optic network coverage, but then we also have the microwave tower radio communication, which is a huge plus because it is a backbone under emergency conditions and when we have situations where we need more than one line of communication, that becomes handy. So this particular chapter delves into all these elements in quite some detail, as a matter of fact. With that, let me go to the next part of this chapter. This particular section on cybersecurity, I thought is, of course, every part is well written. Each part is very, very well written. But this chapter, this section in particular, goes into quite a bit detail about what type of cyber risks should you be concerned about, and what type of coordination should happen with IT staff. I'm sure many of you know this, have gone through this before. In the ITS world, there's this conversation about the ITS and IT interaction that should happen, the coordination, the connectivity, right? The person-to-person connectivity, the office-to-office connectivity that should happen. So those elements are all covered in this particular cybersecurity chapter. And as a part of the emerging technologies lead at Florida DOT, I'm a part of the Transportation Technology Office. We have the Chief Information Officer alongside with me. We have the cybersecurity, we have the information security leader as well. And the more I work with them, the more I realize how important it is to have a seamless coordination across the board within our transportation offices, right? Between ITS and technology areas and the IT groups as well. So you'll see all those elements covered in here. A lot of references to the overarching guidance with respect to NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. There's a lot of references on assessment tools. There is enough information about the risk management and resiliency planning. There's a lot of guidance on cybersecurity for TMCs. I'm sure this is a hot topic in every TMC without a question. So those aspects are covered extremely well. There's also a self-assessment topic, which I thought was very helpful, which I thought is very helpful. There's a planning and how do you conduct realistic exercises? I mean, and then, of course, the best practices that are being adopted at different agencies have been spelled out without mentioning names, I would say, in a great detail. And also staying current on potential threats and best practices. I think earlier on one of the slides, I showed the V2X data exchange platform. Here in the state of Florida, we started developing the V2X data exchange platform 2.5 years ago. And within the first year, we did not have any breach of any sort, but the fear or the concern of a breach was always real, right? I mean, especially when we say the data is going to be stored on the cloud, and whether it's Amazon Web Services or where, it doesn't matter, right? Wherever you store the data, if those systems get touched or breached somehow, there's always the concern if our own internal systems are going to get touched or breached somehow. So all these aspects are, I would say, covered to a great extent, to the extent that one should really know within the Transportation Operations Manual. And I would highly encourage somebody to, folks to take a close look at it. Then the next section, which really gets into the big data and analytics, I think goes without saying that big data analytics have become a big part of everything we do. Big data does not mean many terabytes worth of data. Big data also means complex data. Big data also means you're bringing data from different sources. Big data also means that you're bringing information which is both historical and real time, right? So you can define big in many different ways, I guess is my point that I'm really trying to make here. And then what do you do with those data? I mean, back in the day, we had pneumatic roadside tube counts. I would say back in the day, even now they're used. But again, the point here is we're getting more and more into intrusive detectors, non-intrusive detectors. We're getting into the probes, which are going into connected vehicle technologies. Without mentioning names, there are companies who have travel time devices out there, but there's a convergence of connected vehicle roadside units along with the same units, along with the same travel time devices, I should say. So there is a lot of convergence when it comes to big data and analytics. And I'm sure many of the infrastructure owner operators and state DOTs or local agencies or public agencies on this call probably know how many calls we all get practically every week from vendors and industry partners, just for that half-hour time to explain what they have in terms of data tools and techniques, right? I would say that reading this section to me has been very helpful in understanding what we mean by big data, what type of analytics we should be thinking about, how to think about integrating many technologies across many sectors. I mean, I know smart cities type of concept has been discussed for some time. What is meant by that? How do you bring disparate data sets and integrate them? So those elements, I think, are covered very well in this section under big data and analytics. Data availability and need for robust analytics. I know that many years ago, or even now, I would say, folks still depend on a lot of historic data, whether it's crash data or mobility data. But then there's a huge shift towards real-time data. Okay, what happens when you get all that real-time data? What percent of people are actually using what percent of real-time data, right? I would say that it is important to have a good policy level framework and discussion on what we mean by big data and how we're going to utilize them. It's not enough to say that we have another great tool in the toolkit, right? It has to be of some use to everyone and provide value. Shall we say what do you call, the dashboards are becoming very popular in this day and age. The business intelligence type of frameworks are being brought in as well. So in all, I felt that this section provides an overall excellent both breadth and depth perspective on data analytics and how you can leverage them to make decisions at your organization. The next section goes into one of the most commonly used terms in this day and age, artificial intelligence, and of course, advanced computing. The artificial intelligence section in particular really focused on our transportation aspects. And that's the good news about it, because quite frankly speaking, we get a lot of calls, as I said before, right? Most of these calls are about generative language models, about large language models. You speak, you type, you bring in a document, or they go through all the different documents, they summarize things for you, they summarize the meeting minutes. That's all fine and dandy, right? I mean, that's what we say ChatGPT tends to be good at, right? Bringing data from different sources, information from different sources, providing references, giving you the summaries and everything. But we are all in the field of transportation, and we want transportation use cases, right? So the role of AI in a transportation setting is what you actually see in this section. And as I laid down there, you'll see references to or discussion on automated driving systems, ADS, advanced driver-assisted systems, cooperative driving automation, road surface conditions, traffic sensing, asset management, data collection, and estimation. And from an edge computing point of view, how do you simplify the operations? How do you start condensing large data sets? And don't get me wrong, there's not a lot of technical, how do you simplify there's not a lot of you write the algorithms type of discussion, but these are the things which state DOTs and as public agencies and even private entities can use in day-to-day lives. I'll stay on this slide for for about a minute or so. If you ask me one of the hot topics today, that happens to be ADS, automated driving systems. Increasingly, state agencies are wanting to figure out how to learn or how to get the data from the field level and figure out the payment conditions. Do I have the striping that is machine readable? If an OEM, auto OEM, original equipment manufacturer, right? If an auto OEM comes to us or a car company comes to us and say, hey, we want to work in your state, we want to build a system where we can read your lines, shall we say, the payment markings, etc. And then we basically have the opportunity to do that kind of work in an ADS setting. But then we also need to know what type of tools and techniques to use. So the goal here is to make sure that we, going forward, apply technologies to do this. At the TRB, and I'm sure when you go to ITS America, you'll see a lot of vendors in the booths out there who have some really, really good systems out there. You don't have to expend a lot of time and effort driving miles and miles of corridors, right? There are companies who can actually use the satellite data and produce the necessary visualization imagery for you. So anyway, long story short, AI is being applied. I should say machine learning is being applied to get artificial intelligence type derived outputs from the existing data, be it the visual data, or the hard data that we have in our Excel spreadsheets or Access databases, or the PL SQL outputs, or whichever way, right? So all those things are happening in this day and age, and you'll get a good understanding of what is covered under the AI in this particular chapter. And the next thing you see is connected vehicles. I don't have to say much about this because many of us have been floating in this ocean for a little while already in the connected vehicle world. In particular, there's some really good visual representation, as you see on the right-hand side of the slide, with respect to not only the freeway-related connected vehicle approaches, but also with respect to arterials. I mean, our traffic signal controllers are smart machines, right? They are computers in their own right, and they're producing highly valuable amount of bits and bytes and data every millisecond or microsecond, I should say. And how do you tap into those to understand and draw the analytics and use them for effective connected vehicle technologies, for the vehicle to infrastructure type of approaches? So anticipated opportunities for CVs to improve transportation operations, that is stated very well in this document. And then the impacts of CVs on operations. I mean, I can give many examples, having dealt with this for 5+ years or many more years than that. I do have to say that even though we talk about connected vehicles today, connected vehicles are really building off of good TSMO programs, which are building off of good freeway and arterial operations and ITS systems and TMC operations. So if you really want to have a good emerging technology program, you got to have a good connected automated vehicle program. And I'm not saying it's necessary, but it's helpful to have one. At a minimum, you need to have a very strong TSMO program in your organization to be able to do that, right? Because once you do that, you get a feel for what technologies can and cannot, or should and should not do for you. And the last thing that this particular chapter, chapter 19, covers is automated vehicles. Once again, this is also an area we all have been in for some time. What kind of anticipated opportunities exist for AVs to improve transportation operations? We all hear about the AV shuttles that are out there. Are they serving the purpose? There's folks on both sides of the aisle who say, yes, they're doing what they're supposed to. And then there's folks who say, well, they're not running at the speed at which we want to see. But the point is making the most of the technology that is out there, especially since the pandemic is another topic that comes up. There's also the synergies between AVs and CVs. I mean, we have to accept the fact that autonomous automated vehicles are different from connected vehicles. One is more infrastructure focused, another one is more V2V. One is V2I, another is V2V type of thing. But then there's a V and an I in both, right? So it's important to understand how they both have to really interconnect with each other to have a seamless CAV system, shall we say, connected in automated vehicles. And managing the uncertainties around AVs is a big topic. I can give you one example, which all of you know. Anytime there's an autonomous vehicle on the roadway, and unfortunately, when there's an incident, and we know of some highly publicized incidents out there, as transportation professionals, we have to be very cautious when these systems are deployed. So even if state rules allow for free testing out there, I'm sure everybody would like to know when somebody is doing the testing so that we have that good collaboration, so that public safety is assured and law enforcement agencies are aware, as do the state DOTs as well. So those kind of topics you can notice them in this chapter. Let me quickly move on to the next chapter under the emerging trends overall unit, the industry trends. And this is chapter number 30. As you can see highlighted here, the changing roles in the 21st century. I think this is probably one of the most dynamic chapters, literally and figuratively speaking, because this is a chapter which is going to change, obviously, for obvious reasons. There's also a lot of interesting detail in this chapter. Changing roles in the 21st century. For those in the technology world, this should not be news. But if any of us have been working only on the traditional transportation work, this chapter will be very interesting and insightful to you at the same time. What kind of trends are out there? How are things changing as we speak? Literally, somebody told me this morning, emerging technologies are changing not by the month, not even by the week, but by the day. And I agree with that. The vendors I spoke with 3 months are probably not going to say the same thing if I have a chat or a conversation with them at ITS America in 3 weeks from now. I'm sure there'll be a lot of new things out there to see and tell. The point being, emerging technologies are emerging, no pun intended there, but they are. how do you mitigate the risks? I think this section was interesting. This particular section was very interesting to me, even though it's only 2 pages long, because obviously, as at a state DOT, at public agencies, the leaders will ask the questions, and rightfully so, on why we should invest in technologies. And that's because when the same dollars are competing with the bridge projects, with maintenance projects, with the payment marking projects, and with the traditional things, or with everything that has to be kept up and running, we have to justify, right, why we need to invest, or why should we be investing in technology. So, and when you invest, it comes with a certain amount of risk, because there are some new things that are going to be experimented with, tested out, etc. So the risk management aspect is, I thought, very well developed and designed in this particular chapter. Examples of industry trends in operations. Mind you, this is the Transportation Operations Manual, right? It is just not a philosophical exercise. And for that reason, you'll see throughout this term, the focus is on operations. And for that reason, I think it's commendable that AASHTO has taken so much time and effort bringing all the experts to the table and developing it with a strong focus on operations, and you'll find that in this chapter as well. The impact on agencies' activities. In other words, once you take up emerging technologies and emerging technology implementation, what type of activities should be associated with that? You need to have good stakeholder consultation. You need to do a lot of, shall we say, advocating for technologies within your organization. Fortunately, the top level leadership in many organizations get it. They know how important it is to invest time and effort in technologies in this day and age. Because at the end of the day, the benefits are pretty significant for the investments you make. Not trying to preach here, but I'm just trying to say that folks who've been involved in this know that very well. And you will see those elements built into this. But then with any new thing, there's going to be risk. And this chapter actually addresses that. The evolution of organizations, structure, and workforce. By far, this workforce topic is another major theme everybody is talking about, and rightfully so, right? You bring the younger workforce. I mean, we all talk about attracting, retaining, and attracting, retaining, and training, ART, right? Attracting, retaining, and training our workforce. How do you attract the younger force, right? A younger workforce if technologies are not within your, shall we say, back pocket or within your organization's umbrella. For that reason, I think it is important to think about how technologies can help the younger workforce, but also figure out what their interest level is. And you see those elements in this particular chapter. What kind of organization structure should you have? Those type of things are covered here. Increased emphasis on technology. I mean, goes without saying that no matter which organization you're at, the leadership talks about technology and the practitioners want to implement technology. And there's a lot of positive movement towards investing in technologies. There's a greater appetite to try out new things today than it was a few years ago, which is all good news, because nobody wants to be left behind when it comes to technologies and implementation, especially when the results are going to start showing up in terms of safety and mobility improvements. And the last thing that is covered here is the increased need for data management. So I'll be very quick over the next few slides, and then we'll go to a Q&A. With respect to the roles in the 21st century, in particular, purchasing services, leveraging the private sector opportunities. In other words, when they come to you, what do you do, and what specific things do you want to handle? I mean, right here on this page, on this slide, pardon me, you can see references to third-party traveler information, increased use of virtual TMCs, traffic management centers. There's a lot of information contained in here, including on Internet of Things, etc., online services for enhanced operational awareness, public-private partnerships, or trading arrangements with the industry. That to me is a very interesting topic, and I spend a lot of time on partnerships here at Florida DOT. The three things we do obviously are mainstreaming emerging technologies within the department, extending partnerships with the industry, and understanding how we can assist them as much as we'd like to take their help. They need to see benefits too. And the third thing we do is tell the F-dot story. So if you really want to tell your department story, I think you need to read these 2 chapters because you'll find a lot of good information on what to communicate, how much to communicate, and what to communicate. The risk management chapter clearly goes into the most obvious risks, cybersecurity, we discussed it earlier, operational risks, liability. Litigation is a huge topic. I mean, I can give you many examples, and I'm sure you can too. You just cannot go implement a wrong way driving technology system and think that you're done. You have to operate it, you have to maintain it, you have to be aware and keep records of how the system is working, because just in case someday an event occurs, and if there was no detection at the time the wrong way driving movement occurred, that's going to lead to a liability situation, right? So it is one thing to embrace technology and implement it and deploy it. It's a whole different thing to operate and maintain it. And I'm not going into the O&M chapters in Tom, but there's a lot of good information on operations and maintenance, which you should read. So the point here is there is a litigation risk as well with respect to emerging technologies. And for that reason, doing that risk assessment and finding risk mitigation measures is absolutely key before you go deploy any technology. I cannot underscore how important this is. I'm not saying spend months and months doing analysis, but be completely aware of what we're getting into, right? This is the reason why those vendor conversations would be helpful, because those are the kind of things we ask. Tell us now the other side of the story. What should we be watching for? Anyway, organizational capacity and knowledge of risk is important. And then risk of not advancing TSMO because of other risks is also covered well. A few examples are also stated in this chapter. Examples of industry trends in operations. You see all of them there. I don't need to read them. Just a few: mobility on demand, for example, the MaaS or mobility as a service, smart cities, road user charging, that has been discussed too. The next generation traffic management systems, as I said before, John is so big on this, and he's such a great champion of these things. These are the type of topics which would, we think, set the trend and help us focus on things that we should be doing today in the transportation operations business, shall we say. Impacts on agencies' activities. I know it's easy to say it'll improve agencies' operations. That's simplifying everything. The fact is, we need to understand what those implications could be to adopting technologies. But then you see the type of technologies that could help improve agencies' operations. Those are stated in this particular section. What type of technologies are being used by travelers? It's not enough to say that all these are contained in there, but eventually they got to be a user at the end of the day, right? So what would make the most or meaningful sense to a traveler? That is also stated in here, in this particular one, not in addition to the transportation agencies. Workforce, I think I touched on this earlier. The organizational structure, we need subject matter experts at the end of the day to implement emerging technologies. And I heard that of all the areas, this is one area where you really are, state agencies, private sector, public sector, everybody's looking for those handful of experts in the emerging technologies area. And it means a lot when you have one, because eventually we need some good ideas, implementable ideas, ready ideas, and things that can make a difference, differentiating ideas. I don't know, saying some words here, right? Organizing for collaboration. There's no question that emerging technologies implementation requires extensive amount of collaboration. Goes without saying. You need the subject matter experts, you need the domain experts, shall we say, you need the participating office, whether it's a roadway design, construction, operations, maintenance office, work program, information technology, the general counsel's office. I mean, comptroller's office, we can go on and on. You can apply these technologies practically in every single office when you think about it. But here we're talking about operations. And for that reason, we need to think about what type of procurement approaches we should take. Are traditional procurement approaches adequate enough for emerging technologies? We had this conversation back when the connected vehicle programs were taking off. What type of procurement approaches do you want to have? can you have innovative, creative approaches? And here at Florida DOT, we think we ground our teeth a little bit on this one because we started adding what is called value add to the technology, to the connected vehicle projects. So instead of just giving me the plain money, like tell me what other things you could do. So that was one way of having the proposers indicate to you things we've never thought of before. Like, yeah, I can bring in these additional features. In addition to the DSRC, I can bring in CV2X, some things along those lines back in the day. Or in addition to the roadside unit, I can also embed the travel time devices on top, travel time detection on top of that. So you can get both the connected vehicle and travel time information. So what value addition are you going to bring is a big part of procurement, shall we say. And then how do you maintain these technologies? Is everything pay per use or what? Is it all a software as a service type of, as they use the term, are you constantly cutting a check because now you have a technology system? It's important to understand how to maintain these technologies. I mean, it's not as easy as it is as it is said, right? I mean, easier said than done. Then the next section here goes into increased needs for data management. I'll wrap up in the next 3 or 4 minutes. And performance management. There's all kinds of, I mean, the requirements that need to be met, and emphasis on operations. Desire to quantify the benefit cost. I can talk about this for 35 minutes if you want me to. When we started the connected vehicle program, our leadership rightfully asked, Raj, what will be the benefit costs associated with this, right? So we all have to think about that. It's not enough to say we want to go deploy a program and it costs X dollars. What type of benefits are we going to get? Safety and mobility in particular. What do you do under constrained resource situations in an operations setting? How do you monitor? What type of disadvantaged user groups would you be taking help from? I think this is straightforward with respect to workforce development, technical skills and competencies, peer exchange focus, for example, staff development and mentoring opportunities, and then the broad technology and management skills need to be considered too. Last slide, increased need for integration. Technology cannot stand on its own. Leadership needs technology, technology needs leadership, everybody needs stakeholders, we need partners. So it's one big party where everybody has to come together to really make it happen. And you actually see this in the Transportation Operations Manual loud and clear. With that, we have 10 minutes left, and I want to thank you all for listening to this presentation. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you, NOCoE, for helping us bring this message out to you. Adam, back to you.
Thank you so much, Raj. That was fantastic. As you were talking, we put some links in the chat box associated with what you were talking about. Again, if you scroll up in there for anybody who's interested, there's more information. If there's questions that come in, please put them in the chat box, or feel free to raise your hand, and I can unmute you, and you can ask Raj directly. Raj, a couple questions that I had in kind of honing in on some of what you discussed and the tools and how have things changed, the selling to the leadership aspect. And you talked about how some of the emerging trends and industry trends helps with that. How do you see the TOM kind of changing across the board, not just with those trends, but as a document into itself?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Actually, I had this same question from my leadership this morning. We were just chatting about it, and so I can answer this question. First and foremost, I think the Transportation Operations Manual as a whole I cannot think of a topic that is not covered in the Transportation Operations Manual. It goes into the policy level detail, it goes into the operations level detail, though that's a focus area. It gives you, I would say, practically answers to, I would say anything, but there's always something that's left out, right? I would say that if you want to know about the benefit costs associated with deploying transportation operations program, shall we say, how do you operate and maintain systems, for example? These are the kind of things leadership would typically be interested in, because at the end of the day, all these investments that are being made and approved by the leadership, they got to make a difference, whether it's improvement in safety out there, or moving the traffic efficiently, providing detours, making sure road ranges are providing the service at the same time they are safe, ensuring that vehicles are navigating through work zones safely. When I say safely, not safety, not just safety of only the vehicles, but safety of those guys and ladies who are working in the work zone, what, 8 to 10 hours a day? I mean,
Yeah.
somebody gave a good example. Would you have your work desk in the median or on the side of an interstate 8 hours a day? Even if I provide you air conditioning, I would say 99 out of 100 people will say, no, I'm good in my office. But there's these folks who are exposed 9, 10 hours a day. And how do you get people through those work zones in a safe manner? So we need to think about these things. And I think Transportation Operations Manual provides that framework, provides that approach, provides answers to many of the questions which I would say most TSM professionals would have. So it's not only for the leadership level, but also for the in terms of policy detail, but also in terms of the operational detail and the tactical level, which we can leverage and shall we say, put it into practice, I guess is the best way to put it.
That's great. So you're a published author and and a subject matter expert in a few things that are covered in here. You mentioned connected vehicles as well. What do you see as the level of depth of the manual when you think about people on your team who you might be handing it to, not just to support the leadership, but to improve people throughout, Florida DOT at the district level at the home office? Who are you handing this manual to?
Yeah, so here we have the Florida DOT's TSM program is led by Fred Heary. So his office keeps the manual, and we have a very strong and active coordination with our district offices. We have the ITS working groups, we have the TSM leadership team. So they all have an opportunity to review this document, and they'll be able to just, shall we say, put it into practice. I would say that if I were a practitioner opening this guide, I would first go through the table of contents and figure out which areas are going to be key to my day-to-day work, or which particular areas are going to be of value to me to speak with my leadership or to train my, shall we say, team, so to say. From that standpoint, I think at Florida DOT, we can definitely utilize this manual. I heard from many other states. I think Jennifer Portano has done such an outstanding job bringing this manual to her entire team. Really, I think it's good to take a feather out of her cap and look at how she's put into practice. And if we all can do the same thing, which is get our teams to at least review the document in the first place. We all talk about workforce development activities, but I think reading this document to me is the biggest workforce development activity. I mean, ideally, if we all can read a chapter and share with each other, and there's lots of chapters in there, part A through part F, that would be a big game changer going forward. I was telling someone that to me, this is more like the MUTCD of TSM, and if that makes sense. Yeah, it'll be a document for the future, no question about it, for the present and future.
Yeah, Jennifer, on that first webinar, for those who haven't seen it, Jennifer basically instituted a book club, and it reminded me less of a book club and more of, I come from the humanities background, it reminded me more of class, where you go home, you got to read, you got to come back, present what's most important, argue about maybe what you disagree with, agree with, might change, and be prepared to do so. It seems it's working quite well in North Carolina. Another question came in from Tim in Iowa. Excellent presentation, he says, and agreed. What about contents in the TOM that you would share with staff who don't have TSMO as their primary focus? Are there areas, interdisciplinary coordination is a huge part of TSMO in general. So when we talk about using the TOM to engage with folks outside of the TSMO discipline, where do you see the benefits?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. First of all, Tim, so good to see you. Tim and I are co-chairs of the AASHTO CTS or ITS working group, so we collaborate with each other every day. And quite honestly, I would say that I'm presenting it on his behalf as well. So it's really Tim's and my effort, in my opinion. But Tim, thank you for the question. I think that's a great question because it's nice to talk about TSM&O to TSM&O folks, right? It's a whole different ballgame to talk TSM&O to non-TSM&O folks. I honestly believe that this manual can be utilized by any office. I can give it to a roadway design colleague. I can give it to somebody in this construction office or maintenance office and expect them to read and still understand TSM&O as much as we can. So I think it's written in a very simple, effective language, which anybody can understand. Yes, there are certain technical elements which TSM&O folks probably would appreciate more than others, but that goes with any specialized manual, right? I would say, and Tim, I think I take your point there. I think it is good to make it more of a collaborative exercise with other team members as well, instead of just distributing to a bunch of TSM&O colleagues only. It's probably a good idea to get it out to others as well, because if we want to have good TSM&O programs, we need to mainstream all the way from PD&E through planning, design, construction, operations, maintenance, and implementation out there, right? So everybody needs to understand TSM&O, just not TSM&O colleagues. So thank you, Tim. Great question.
Well, we are at the hour mark, so I think we'll conclude the webinar for today. Raj, can't thank you enough for that presentation. It's something again that'll be used as a tool for those who are using the TOM. This presentation will live on as a recording and be something can serve as an introduction into those sections of the operations manual going forward to help guide people through this important topic. The upcoming TOM webinar is on April 18th. You can check it out in the NOCoE calendar. Scroll up to the top of your chat to find the link to the calendar. Again, that's going to be on more tools to support your use of the operations manual. Thank you one last time to Raj, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Adam. Bye, everyone.